Hi, welcome to the Pints Polishing Podcast. I'm Marshall. That's Nick. You can find us at hypercleanstore.com. That's where you can go check out the products. You want to interact? Go over to the Facebook group, search HyperClean Specialist Group, and you'll get to interact with both of us there. We love seeing everybody's work and everything that goes on there. It's a great place. All
Yeah,
right, Nick,
absolutely.
let's do some buy and sell. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and buy. I'm going to go ahead and buy because it kind of started out of last week. Last week's community pub. Boy, it's just cool things that just happen when guys get together and just start drinking beer and chatting. One of the things you find is, oh, right, forgot about that place. So I get a message. It's Friday night. Somebody's hungry, right? We've all had that. Wifey wants some food. I want something good. So I go, cool. I'm in. I know exactly where to go. We just talked about Trader Joe's. Absolutely loved it. I took a little picture of the basket because I was so thrilled. Listen, I got wine. I got Alfredo. I know it's not your Alfredo the way your grandmother would have made it, or probably you don't like, but listen,
Wow.
that
Wow.
Alfredo is going to work in 90% of the restaurants here. So listen, from the Midwest, I'm in. But overall, it's not what I'm buying. The biggest find of the night wasn't the cool $10 bottles of wine that actually were decent. It was the orange juice the next morning from Mimosas. Let me tell you, orange juice from Trader Joe's is off the hook. You get super smooth. It's not oversweet. You don't get that crazy pulp. It's just one of the absolute best. I actually had to have more this morning. If you can drink coffee and orange juice, something to be said about that orange juice. So I'm buying Trader Joe's orange juice.
Well, this has been a fun episode. I'll catch you guys next week.
See ya.
Wow.
Deuces.
We're getting Trader Joe's talk. I mean, soon you're going to be telling me about your new Birkenstocks. I'm like, hey, I got these new sandals. I got,
What do you mean?
you know what I
Dude,
mean. So you're going to be telling
you
me
mean I'm
about the
not
hike
supposed
you
to
went
have
on.
those?
Yeah, you're going to talk about the hike you went on, the new socks you got. I mean, we're headed down a dangerous path here, but I'm not a big orange juice guy. It's a little too sweet for me. So if it's a little on the less sweet side, I think I could probably deal with it. So I'm going to buy something a little bit since we are a car podcast.
Listen, I
Since
can't
we
believe
are
you
a
let me
car,
slide with the mimosa talk. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
let me slide
Look,
right through with mimosas. So hey,
I
I'm
can't
thrilled.
address everything in the fiasco that was your buy and sell moment. Okay, I got to move on. I got to get the crowd back because everyone's leaving now. So I'm going to buy something. I went to a car show on Sunday. Cars and coffee, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to say this because I know a lot of guys have a lot of opinions about cars and coffee and car shows, especially the pros that are listening to us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit different story. I took my BMW out. I cleaned it up. We're testing some products inside hyperCLEAN. So it's a great car. It's all black. It's great. It's a great test vehicle for us. And you take a dialed in car to a car show, you get a lot of questions. Hey, what do you use? What do you do? This and that. And there's this stigma that we all have about car show people. They're going to do it themselves. Well, I kind of found the opposite on Sunday. I don't go to this cars and coffee all that often, probably 5 times a year maybe. I don't know a lot of people there. You know, I don't have a bunch of relationships. I know plenty of people, but not like the whole show or anything like that. And we end up booking a couple meetings out of it. You know, guys that want to talk about, hey, I have this other car, or you know, I want you to come down, 5 spots and look at my car. Tell me what you see. And, I'm going to buy that. I think that culture is changing. It's changing because the age of the people. This wasn't a classic car. I mean, there were a few classic cars there, but this was a cars and coffee. So from Porsche, there was a Pagani there. There was some Lambos there. There were some Ferraris there. There's some BMWs there. There's some old VWs there. There, it's just guys getting together and shooting the shit about cars. And I'm going to keep saying this. The crowd is changing. Now, you go to a hot rod show or you go to a muscle car show or something like that, you're going to have a whole different experience. But there was a nice mix of people there. And I already stopped and looked at a couple cars this morning. I'm going to give them estimates on what we want to do to that car. But what I found was a more welcoming group to how do I get my car to look like yours? So there's a lesson to be learned here. There's a lot of guys that go to a car show with nothing to offer. Is your car dialed in? Is your car a cool car to look at? Nobody says go out and spend millions of dollars on a Pagani that you don't have the money for. But if you have some type of vehicle you take pride in and you're a professional and you take that to a car show, there are dividends being returned. I talked to a bunch of guys that run big shops in LA, Houston, other places, Phoenix. We know this is happening. I really enjoyed myself. And I know that's hard to say because we talked about the know-it-all guy just recently on the show. I found a totally different crowd. Were the know-it-alls there? Yeah, but I walked away from them, walked over, hey man, let me check out your car. And I'm just asking them, hey, what have you put on it? What have you done? What have you, you know, there is something to being personable at these shows that leads to good relationships. So I know there's a lot of guys out there struggling right now. I saw an internet post from one of the biggest shops in Texas, and he kind of went on a rant this weekend about what's coming in the economy and how things are getting tough. But he's also a guy that has 3 or 4 cars invested in his business that he takes to car shows all the time. So I texted him. I said, "What are you seeing?" He goes, "Yeah, man, it's changing." And I'm going to buy that. Now, mind you, I'm giving you the parameters here. You want to go to a classic car show, you're going to get classic car guy. Older in age, has been using this one way, is going to wipe his car dry with nothing on it, with a towel when he gets to the show. I get it. Those guys can be frustrating. You get into these, and by younger, I mean 50 and under, not necessarily 18-year-olds all the time, but 50 and under. We seem to have a different car guy showing up at these Cars and Coffees and these types of events. So I had a great time. I know some of those guys are going to be listening. Thanks for the time. These guys asked a ton of questions. And they were just like picking my brain, and there was an engine guy there, and they were picking his brain. And I'm telling you, it's changing. And so many of you are either going to take that and say, I don't know what I'm talking about, and just keep doing your thing, or you're going to really start investing in these shows and saying, hey, man, if you're a true car guy, you love going to these shows anyway. They had food trucks there. Phenomenal breakfast stuff. Phenomenal. I mean, this is well-planned stuff. And I talked to the organizer, and we may be doing some things with them, but ultimately, I was really impressed with everything because that show didn't start out that way. About 2-3 years ago, that show was a little bit raggedy, whatever. Talked to the guy. He goes, man, I was looking for the right people. And as a guy running a company with you and VR, looking for the right people, he's got them now. It was a hell of a time. So I'm going to buy that this weekend.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Curious, I'm sure like others are. We're thinking of you at a car show. We're like, okay, what's BMW guy at a car show? What do you wear? What's your uniform, huh? What's what
First
are
of
you
all,
rolling?
anybody that's watching the podcast, which we now have, posting on YouTube and other places, I dress the same all the time. So sweatshirt, pants, tennis shoes. I'm pretty basic. I do find the humor in guys that have T-shirts matching their car brand. So I had to give guys a little bit of headache about that, and they
You didn't
laughed.
wear yours?
And what's that? What's
You
that?
didn't wear yours?
No. I don't own any
You left it at home?
BMW apparel. I don't own any automotive apparel, I should say. Not my move. But yeah, no, I'm simple. Hat, sweatshirt, some pants. Get on with my life.
All right, I'm drinking something not so simple, but it's super smooth for your enjoyment, according to Left Hand Brewing, which is ultimately one of my favorite craft brewers up there in Colorado. Really great. What they do is a cool nitro. Uh, they have a whole line of nitros. And what's unique about nitro, which we talked about on the pub, you straight pour them. So you get this straight pour, and then the nitro kind of glistens through the glass. This is stuff that you really enjoy hearing about when it comes to beer, as being the beer connoisseur you are.
Yeah, I
So
mean, look, I gave you your opportunity. I had like the 3 worst beers of my life when I was in Tulsa. So, take everything he says with a grain of salt.
do you ever drink a stout though? Have you ever? I mean, that stout, that chocolate or coffee type of beer.
Like
You ever
Guinness?
drink one? Guinness is, yeah, is that
Yeah, I
like
like
the
Guinness.
Budweiser of stouts, yeah.
Yeah, I like Guinness. I mean, I drank Guinness like in Scotland. It definitely tastes a lot different than here.
Oh, yeah, didn't
Uh,
you say it's warm too?
the funny thing is, where we were in Scotland, they didn't serve warm beer. I think
Oh,
that's like pockets of Europe, drink room temperature, but it's real pockets. It's not everywhere. That's kind of a misconception that I had because I have been to Europe a few times and I have gotten into those pockets where they serve warm beer. But no, and again, they had a great beer called Tennant's and
mm.
it was like ice cold. Like wherever you went, tenants must sell them the refrigeration for that because that one was like elevated ice cold compared to whatever else you order on the menu. But yeah, there are pockets of people that drink warm Guinness is a thing.
Well, how's your Christmas shopping going? You ready? You all finished?
I don't do any of that, so that's handled by somebody else in the household. So I don't I can't tell you what's been spent, what's been bought, who's been bought for. I just bow out of that. That's not my move in the household there.
So you miss out on all those fun shopping experiences the rest of us get to enjoy, like I did this weekend. Walking through the shopping halls as well as walking up to the big box stores. There's something that the cough, right? Seems like everybody's sick right now. I think you guys are experiencing some stuff. I am
Yeah,
still going through. So if I cough through the episode, apologies. I you showed me some rims on a pretty cool truck earlier.
yeah.
I'm really been interested. I think the more I'm seeing some rims that start to pop out, cool colors and this and that, but it's still the people with dark rims, black rims, truck or not. I'm infatuated how I walk through and there's not a one. There's not a single one that I could ever see all weekend that was anywhere cared for, that wasn't beat up. And I
Oh,
got really sad. I had a moment of like really hanging my head. And then I looked up and I went, wow, no, it was not. It wasn't what everybody's thinking. It was something much different. And I went, could I actually drive a Buick? I mean,
oh,
I went, that, whatever that is, wow.
yeah.
I'm in. Like that, they've really done a pretty cool job with it. What the Invista? Is that how it's called?
I think it's called the Invicta or something like that.
Invicta? Yeah.
Here's what I'll tell you. For people that don't know, and this is kind of just a random thought about Buick. Buick exists because of China. So Buick is huge in Asia. So when everybody's like, "Wow, I don't know who drives a Buick," well, let me tell you, a lot of people drive Buicks. It's just not in the U.S. anymore.
I can only thought of Tiger Woods. I mean, that's just the only
Yeah.
guy that came to my
Well,
mind.
yeah, that's been a long time ago. I mean, Marty's 400 years old, evidently. So you're right though. Buick has built a lot of great looking vehicles in the last 5 to 7 years. The problem is they're just, you know, they were an older crowd when we were growing up. The LeSabre, those were an
Mhm.
older crowd vehicle. They tried to get younger. They couldn't shake the Buick thing. But for anybody wondering, Buick will be around as long as the Asian market's around because they absolutely positively buy a ton of them. So the US is sort of an afterthought for Buick. I think they've done a lot of. I wouldn't buy one, but that's probably just a stupid opinion because they're really freaking nice.
Listen, I was with that. I'd never even thought of. I saw it, and it was this like ocean blue metallic, I think is what they
Yeah,
call it. It's a super beautiful color. It's got the body lines on it. I was really impressed. Now, here's where I went when I started looking at it. I go, I never thought I would, but could I? I could
sure.
now because what they've done is they did what Nissan's done. They did what the Rogue did. They've got a 3-cylinder.
Wow.
And I just go, okay.
Marty's not a horsepower guy. So, yeah, no, here's what I'll say.
Listen,
It
we're all talking about efficiency, getting back and forth. I don't necessarily have to have horsepower. Yeah, I think it was like 170 something. It's got a turbo on it. It gets good enough for getting on the highway. Listen,
yeah.
I'm not
Here
you in Vegas. I'm
here
not.
hey, here's the
Like
whole
I just need to
difference.
be
I
on the
don't have
highway.
one single vehicle in my fleet that gets over 17 miles a gallon, including my BMW. We're just polar opposites on this.
We are.
And here's the thing. I will say this. Buick, if it wasn't the Buick name, would be successful.
All right, so where do we fall in though with three-cylinder to what you talked about on this last episode? Great episode. Really dove into it. And ultimately, what you and I both believe in is some type of hybrid mentality. But why hasn't anybody gone this direction is what I'm starting to question. Like we think of
Well,
three cylinders and you just go, oh, you don't like horsepower. Listen, I got enough to get around. And
yeah,
that is ultimately what I think the Asian persuasion,
yeah,
that's what the Asian persuasion is to it, is like, let's go efficient. Inside looks really great. But Americans, you're right. They're all going to go, three cylinders. You don't want horsepower.
yeah. Well, I think that's the argument for hybrid because then you can keep a bigger engine in it and make it more efficient, right? So that would be the argument is let's use some of this battery technology for overall efficiency of the engine, which is that's where Toyota for the most part is headed. They want to go to the more hybrid, throughout their lineup. But you're right. I mean, but this also meets a lot of problems. The perfect example of this is the EcoBoost from Ford, which has been a complete disaster, right? Where they had this bulletproof V8 engine in the Raptor, the original, which I've been looking at, by the way, because that may be the trade I'm making here.
Mm.
So that 2011 to 2014 Raptor engine is one of the most bulletproof engines ever built. The problem is, as they started to lower the cylinders and put more boost into it, and there's a problem when you try to go down from a great engine. Doesn't always work that easily. So what you'd be asking these manufacturers to do is completely retool their engine program, right? That's a tough ask. Let me give you an example of that. When Toyota went to build the Supra, and relaunch it, they're like, well, we'll just have BMW help us with this. Why? Because they didn't want to go back and retool their engine department, right? So it's
Mm.
just not that easy when you're talking about doing this at scale. Musk is talking about this publicly about what is the real problem with building cars? What is the issue? The issue is people and the process because there's so many processes in building a car that when you talk about I'm going to retool from our V8 to our V6, you have problems. If you go down from V6 to 4 with a turbo, there's problems, right? So now you get into massive recall issues, massive build quality issues, massive problems for people that build cars as a manufacturer. And so the reason that it's not happening, and you're right, it should happen. The problem is, how do I run all these V8 engines, then have this other engine line building this and this other engine line build? All of a sudden, you have 50 plants and nobody's making money. And so now you're caught in a rock and a hard place, right? It's just not that easy to just go ahead and what you would call descale from a bigger engine, which all these companies are coming from, right? Everybody's coming from a V8 and they're taking V8 technology and trying to make a V6. Ford has found out complete disaster. If you go from V6 to a four cylinder, there are problems because remember, all of your engineering's on the V8 side. And so everything doesn't scale down so easily. That's my personal opinion on it.
Hmm. So Elon did talk heavily about it on that episode in Rogan, right? And it was the fun episode where they shot the truck with the bow and arrow. That was
And
super
they
cool to
and they
see.
ate the anchovy pineapple pizza. Yeah, look, and he was pretty blunt, and he's getting more blunt with people that you can't just ask car manufacturers to change on a dime. It doesn't work that way.
Oh.
And that's the EV problem, right? We're trying to scale from V8, massive power internal combustion engine, all the way to zero emissions. How's that going to happen? I mean, if you're just asking yourself, no company can pull that off. No company can pull it off. And so you're in this quagmire of just a lot of really silly behavior that we're just going to turn a switch and everything's going to be fine. When they get it figured out, everything will be fine. We're light years away from having that figured out.
Uh, Evidently, some people have thought they've been thinking and figured out my dance moves. However, Kimberly, no, I'm pleading the fifth. Pleading the fifth. That didn't happen. But what did happen this weekend? It was a nice weekend out. Got to go do some shopping, like I said. A lot of people in the Midwest had some nice weekends. I did get something else. The Golden Ducky must have heard and it delivered. I was duckied. I've got a new one to the addition. So next time you're in, you'll get to see it. It's got a cool little blue hairdo, and you're gonna love it, man. I'll have it right on the dash waiting for you when you get here. But some other things out of the specialist group
Hold
besides
on. The Pints
Kimberly.
Polishing Podcast is looking for a new co-host. So please put your application at info@hypercleanstore.com. We're taking applications for the new year.
We have yet to decide which of us will be staying.
We won't tell you which one, but you'll have somebody to do the podcast with. So go ahead and put your resume in.
Besides Kimberly's post of Jeep guy, like, listen, maybe I was been copied doing that sometimes. I don't know. You just feel it in a Jeep sometimes. You let it all hang out. But we had a couple other good ones. This was fun. Justin, 36 degrees outside. Okay, first of all, let's just go ahead and, right? Nicely done, Justin. I remember those days, right? Dipping your hand in that ice cold bucket, anything you could do to stay warm, 36 degrees. There was times where you just call it a day when you're spraying the car down and it freezes.
Yep.
You go, okay, sir, ma'am, I'm not going to charge you for this. Your car just froze over. Apologies.
Yep. We're trying to find any sunny spot we can to get this thing to unthaw for you.
But he still used Impress, and he was still impressed. And the 36 degrees.
Hey, this is a big topic inside of the company. Every time somebody posts about Impress, it makes Marty's day. So if you guys want to pick me up for Marty, go. This was his baby. Loves Impress. This is his thing. So just know every time you guys post one of those, it's like I get a text message. Hey, did you see what this guy said about Impress?
Because it took a little work. Took a little work to get you over to this side, right? We talk about us being, yin and yang in a sense. The cars that you do and your customers are very unique. A lot of cars that I do and the customers I do are unique. Other people also have found the uniqueness of my taste.
Let's leave it at the word unique.
Hey, guys, quick question from Dale. I got a customer with a couple blood drops from his kid's nosebleed in his seatbelt. Whew. All right. Let's go over blood nose on the seatbelt. Yeah. He's got a bunch else that goes into that, but, we can go.
Peroxide is usually the move. Enzyme, that kind of thing. For those that don't know, you can get into some weird things with seatbelts. You pull it all the way out, and you mess up the recoil. A lot of things have happened with seatbelts. Okay, it's just like what we talk about. All these guys talking about taking seats out. It's all good till it's not. It's all good till you set off an airbag. It's all good till you screw up the electrical system. So Dale's right. I know he put in his post some of the things he knows the procedures and all those kinds of things. So seatbelts can get a little bit iffy if you pull them out too far. That's the key. You don't want to mess up the recoil function of it. But, the only move here is usually some type of peroxide, trying to get it out. And you're probably going to be, 50-50 whether it causes some damage. You just don't know.
You ever really do a lot of seatbelts? I think that's one of the social media things that's fascinated me. I don't remember the previous 5 to 10 years if we had this many seatbelts being cleaned as we do over the past 5 years.
Smoke removal is where you run into it. If you ever did heavy smoke removal, those types of jobs, a lot of stuff gets caught in seatbelts. It just depends on how destroyed of a vehicle you're doing.
But you see how many people are putting like the pictures of the videos where like pulling the seatbelt all the way out, putting it outside the car, they're strapping it in, locking, or doing stuff and then power washing it and things like that.
That is not something that we've ever done. No. But again, this comes back to if those guys are doing auction cars or those guys are doing those types of vehicles, they don't care. They'll just get the seatbelt to go back in and it'll be the next guy's problem, right?
I gotta imagine that takes days to dry though.
Oh, dude, it's got to. Unless you're just in some incredibly hot, climate in the middle of the summer. I'm with you on that. I would say this is where you go and assess what you're being paid to do, right? If you are in the auction world and you're doing hammered vehicles where I started my career, I could see it. But there's a different thing. Most seatbelts that we came across for a very long time were black.
Mm.
or that like brown, darkish
Mhm.
brown color where you couldn't see a whole lot. Now you see
Yeah.
much lighter seat belts, and I guarantee you somebody's going to say, "Well, there were always I get there were always light seat belts." I'm just saying it's more common today than what it used to be, and it's matching the interior more and that kind of thing. You'd be surprised how many seat belts were just plain black, right? You really couldn't see a whole lot. So I think now I like guys who are going through that level of detail, but I don't run into any seatbelts in my daily business that would even need that, right? Unless like Dale had somebody's kid just had it happen to get a nosebleed on it or
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm. All right. So Mark said he's got a Mitsubishi Evo with some pretty beaten up and matted suede slash Alcantara slash fake fluff. Anyway, it's ruined, right? So he's wanting to know some recommendations. You've got people saying steam, you got a couple people saying extractor, which I thought was interesting. So, what are we gonna do? Kimberly, which was awesome, she said, "Hey, you got Revive." So she's
Yep.
on your side. Listen, Revive's a great product. It's not like there's a
Yeah.
side on that one, right?
It's
It's
the best side. It's the best product. That's what we say internally. um, this is interesting because a lot of people don't know this, but I've come across some valuable cars that had Alcantara, especially on a steering wheel. They're not well cared for. You can actually sand Alcantara, okay, and kind of bring up, sand off that damaged layer and bring up a new layer. Very dangerous work. If you don't know how to do it, don't do it. But that is the recommendation here from people that do this for a living. I would assume would tell them the same thing.
I don't,
But you have this. The reason I wouldn't go extractor is a pretty simple reason. You'll make it worse with all of that
liquid.
water.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, that is like a big no-no with Alcantara. You have to kind of use your head here. Take something like Revive. If you have a leather brush, guys have some of those smaller leather brushes that are real stiff, but not too stiff, are kind of that medium stiffness. Go ahead, use that, foam it up, but you're trying to use as little product as you can because you don't want things soaking in because that's when it'll get more crunchy and things like that. So what you want to do, I think, is use something like Revive, leather brush, go ahead and agitate the area. But here's the part you're going to have. You need to go back with air after you clean it
Yeah.
and get all of the cleaner out. I don't care whose you use. I see ones that foam up and people are like, this works. So let me tell you, you can put Revive in a little pump foamer and do the same thing. I want people to realize something. Moisture in these fibers is going to crust up and make it worse. So it's nothing to be afraid of. Guys love the vortex or something like that. Go ahead and start blowing those fibers out after you go through and clean them. My guess is if you have a really damaged Alcantara, you have a really dirty Alcantara. You may see a difference just from getting the dirt off the surface and out of the fibers, but then go back, then go back with air and get everything out of there. And what you should see is the fluffing up of those fibers. And that's what you're hoping for. But you want it to be not even damp to the touch. I mean, if you feel like a little bit, like just a little tiny bit, that's fine. You can't keep chasing every piece of moisture, but you need to get 99% of the moisture out of there.
Yeah, you said it, and I just want to go back to something. You said those guys or these guys that like to use, that tool that has become your favorite.
Yeah, Vortex.
First wasn't, but when you were at HQ, you specifically wanted to use it. So didn't even want me to take the chuck off another one. Just
Wow.
do that one and use it, and you were happy.
Like I said, send
So
your resume to info@hypercleansstore.com.
so you keep telling it's these guys, but we know deep down we have proof.
Yeah,
There'll be a
HQ
video
is not set
eventually.
up. HQ is not set up properly, which we
There'll
had a
be a
discussion
video.
about.
There will be eventually. We'll catch it
So
in your
yeah, I
hand.
mean, look, if all you got is straight air, use that. If you got a vortex, use that. Just use air. Air is going to be your friend on these fibers, period, point blank. And so don't go in with an extractor. Look, I just wouldn't risk it. I mean, it would be, you'd have an owner that probably tell you did all the damage. So just
Mm.
avoid it.
Yeah. Okay. So Couple people that have been listening to you. This is fun. We love it when people hear what you're saying. One is Billy. Awesome, Billy. Didn't post another photo of his car or his sweatshirt, so we're happy.
You ain't
Love you,
lying.
Billy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, he talked about a customer that had bought a vehicle and now is looking on Carvana at half the price. Right? It was a Grand Wagoneer that he had done previously, had some stuff, and now he's looking at the price, and something's going, and he's going, "Oh wow, half the value is now gone." The other people who have listened, now we can definitely claim it. Everybody in the community, hands up. Cheers to Nick. He ragged on NFL commentating earlier in the year, and they've now pulled Al Michaels from the playoffs. So,
Yep.
getting in some fresh new meat into the playoff scene with the commentators. How you feel? You feel proud? You nailed a
Look,
couple things here.
Al Michaels is my guy. Anybody that's ever gone back and watched the Olympic hockey team in the 80s, that was Al
Oh, yeah.
Michaels. I think one of the sad parts is that Al, if anybody's watching football on Amazon, Al's not doing so well. Time's catching up to old Al. And he was my guy, coming from my era, Al was the guy. And now you look at it and go, it's time to shut her down, bud. It's time to
Also,
shut. You're
your guy,
79 years old.
a unique thing you guys share in common, huh?
Don't eat veggies. Yeah, Al doesn't eat veggies. He just eats red meat and potatoes. Yeah, never had. I guess some people can consider potatoes a vegetable. I understand, but he doesn't touch anything green. For those that don't know, I'm pretty heavy red meat. I would say probably 90+% of my food is red meat. So, and has been for a very long time. So Al's near and dear to me, and I don't want to see this happen, but Al, time to go. It's your time, man. And we talked about this a lot in a lot of different aspects of business. You're seeing this in the CEO crowd, and you're seeing it across business. Guys just not moving on with their life and allowing the younger blood to get a little bit of show here. And so I think Al for sure is going to be a bystander to the playoffs now. But I've always loved Al Michaels. It's tough to see, but it's time, buddy. I mean, your 80th birthday's coming up. I just don't think that I'll be running a detail shop at 80 either. So sometimes it's just your time.
All right, so last little thing I want to talk about into the specialist group, and this is a post from Bill, and this is an overall topic. I'm just glad Bill posted a photo of his business card and something that he does, and he's got a couple different things. He calls it a coding guarantee card, and I thought it was very unique. And he's taken a thing from, listen, olden days. Not many people even today have business cards. I think
Yeah.
that's really, and there's so many people that have transitioned. You see the ads on social or anywhere of, you touch your phone and now you got a contact digital business card. I like it, and I find it fascinating when people try and do something right. Hey, was a business card, but now I'm going to take it into a customer. In a sense, there's some people say loyalty cards, or they'll do something around their business, but it's not just a business card. I like this adaptation, and it brought a lot of conversation, which was unique, right? Different
Yeah.
people started posting out their ideas and their thoughts. Are you a business? Are you a business card guy?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
No,
I
I
haven't
don't
had
have
one for years.
I don't have business cards anymore. I was kind of surprised at SEMA this year how much everyone was asking for cards. It seemed to be kind of one of those things that I don't think most people running companies are carrying business cards anymore. I mean, so all the meetings that we had, if we had a meeting with an executive, there was no talk of a business card. You just kind of, if you had, most of the time you had each other's number or whatever. Times are changing, but I thought what Bill's idea was a unique idea to him.
Hmm.
If it's a sales thing, or it makes you comfortable as a business, and also makes your customers comfortable, it's a great idea. Those are things that have never been a part of my business. I've never given any guarantee or anything around, ceramic coatings or PPF or windshield film or any of those things. I don't talk that way. It's not a part of my process. But if it is a part of your process, I thought it was a real unique way to kind of say, I'm standing behind this thing. And in
Mhm.
the end, that's all any of us are doing as a business owner. Ceramic coating, PPF, it doesn't matter. Your business is on the hook. So you're going to take care of it, or you're not, and you're going to have an unhappy customer. That's how this whole thing goes.
Yeah, and that's what he says. He's like, "Hey, third-party warranties are crap, and we all know by now they're bullshit. There's a lot of people that did really well over the years. We had a company on trash their warranty program, and they changed their whole business model after they came on and discussed it with us, right? So most people are realizing, hey, even the Carfax bullshit is that's what it is. They don't even list on the Carfax that it was a ceramic coating. It's just a line item that says service.
Yep.
So, a lot of that stuff is crap. And so that's what I love about what he said. He's like, hey, third party warranty system is a racket. So he wants his customers to know I'm the guy. I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
listen, big props there. Big props, Bill. All right. Final thought. And I thought there was one, but final thought, because this is becoming something that we've talked about, but Christopher put it's one of those tire shine guns.
Yep.
All right. This theory, and he's got it great. That tire looks amazing. Christopher did a great job.
100%.
However, there's a lot of people, which I talked about. I see a lot of people use these guns. So this is overall a conversation on how do you apply tire shine. And I'll say if you want to use some air tool, one thing you really want to make sure is you want to really make sure you get the right tire shine for that tool. And you go, oh yeah, it seems easy, right? Well, however, many of the videos I've seen, we've talked about them on some episodes, they'll put an infinite shine type product, like a solvent type of tire shine, and they'll go spray it with these air pneumatic guns, and you just see it going all over the place. Like
Yeah.
literally this giant cloud going.
Yeah.
So overall, there becomes this theory of, do you use something like this? You could, if you've got a real condensed, maybe an ultra dress
Yeah.
would do well.
Yep.
But spraying on an applicator, where does that fall into, a
Yeah.
correct process
So
or incorrect?
we talk to a lot of people. I think the horror stories are when you try to scale that process.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
good point.
The horror stories aren't Christopher doing an awesome job, working on a tire himself. If I was working on a tire, I would sit there and know what to look for like Christopher does and everyone else does that's doing it themselves. But the problem is when you get team members. So you think about in your career, you've seen the horror stories at a dealership. You've seen the horror stories at a car wash. You've seen the horror stories when what? The owner isn't the one applying it. The scalability of it is the issue. We've seen a lot of things on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube with these guns. There's no question about it. And I think one of the things that people have to understand is I think we're coming from it a little bit differently than most people. We're thinking new hire is going to spray tire dressing and things go horribly wrong. Okay. I think if you have this dialed in, you're a one man or two man operation and everyone has experience, these things work phenomenally. You start really scaling a business, you get into some very, very strange things. I mean, we hear from people all the time have a new hire, put tire dressing on a tire, shot all over the side when the customer left. That's without a gun. Now you put a gun in that employee's hand and he starts spraying, and all of a sudden it's all over the car. And what people need to realize about the cloud, let's talk about this, especially with something like solvent or even water-based, but solvent more appropriately. When the cloud goes in the air, it's going on the car. That's the first thing I ever learned about tire shine when I was brought into detailing, is that when you sprayed it on a tire, if it was windy, it's not necessarily that the spray blew onto the car. It's that the cloud would get on the car, the overspray would get on the car, and then when you went to wipe it, you would pick it all up with a towel, or you would look at it and you go, why does the car look like it did before I did this? And what you wouldn't realize is the cloud would settle and different parts. I mean, you've had this happen. When the cloud reaches the windshield,
Oof.
you'll never want to use one of those guns again, because that is horror story 101. And again, that doesn't
The
mean that they're not
smearing of
good.
tire shine on glass is
Yeah, horrible.
never ending.
Horrible. Yeah,
Never
right.
ending.
Yeah, it doesn't end. I mean, even straight alcohol, you're battling it, right? I mean, you're just battling it. And so I think these things are awesome when you're in control of them. If you're thinking about I'm going to have an employee or I'm a guy, I'm a hobbyist, use an applicator.
Yeah.
Okay. These things can create so many problems. But I'll say this, Christopher's tire and his system
Well,
looked
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know they work. I think we just come at it from the horror stories of trying to scale that model, and got to be real upfront here. That is horror stories that I've seen in the thousands at this point in my career and your career. I mean, it's just one of those things.
All right. So this weekend, like I said, I talked to you about it the other, when we were talking earlier. I was over at mom's. We were hanging out, right? Sort of what you do towards the holidays. Always trying to go over see mom. Family get-togethers. We can all relate. Mom says, "Hey, can you go up to the attic? I need to turn off the lights." So evidently she had somebody up there. She didn't want to go up. You can understand. I get up there to turn off the light, and I see this dinosaur, and I go, "Wow, an antenna."
Wow.
Yeah, a metal antenna in the attic. And I go, "Oh, PBS? You remember PBS?
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah." And I just had these moments of flashback, right? Just moments. And I go, "Oh, PBS, public broadcast." And they would put out information, but they would always say, "Hey, this was bought by this endowment fund or these people." And it was a public. And I kind of started thinking that, I wonder, do you think that there's a confusion between public network television and social media? Maybe some people don't realize social media is a business. It's not an endowment fund for just for your educational information like PBS. And
Yeah.
I know it sounds really strange, and you go, "Yeah, come," but I really think there's an analogy between some people that have grown up in social media that don't realize that social media in itself is a business. Not
Yeah.
only just is it a business, but if you're going to be on it, you need to be thinking of it as a business.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation. Look, we're at the end of 2023. We're a few weeks away from 2024, and everybody's reaching out to us on, "Hey, what do you expect the next year? What should I do? What should be my goals?" We talked about that on Saturday's episode. Social media has probably changed more rapidly in the last 36 months than it ever did in the first 10, 15 years. I know that's probably hard for people to believe. Look at TikTok Shop and the way they turn that on, and it's become a fiasco very quickly, that everything coming across is somebody selling you some product they don't own. I think we're going to see TikTok take a big, big hit from this. They'll be smart enough when it does happen. They'll fix it, I'm sure, but it's so in your face right now. These platforms, and we say this all the time on this podcast, they're telling you this is a business. They're telling you that. This isn't Marty and Nick telling you that. They're telling you that. And when you start talking that way and thinking that way, why are you making content? Who are you making content for? What problem are you solving? And ultimately, how are you going to monetize that? Because if you're just on social media creating content for nobody, you don't know who's buying, you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know this, creating content for content's sake, it's over. And all of these platforms are telling you TikTok was the last frontier. This is what people don't realize. TikTok was literally content for content's sake all through the pandemic. Nobody was making any money off that. Largely, most influencers, and just so people know, detailing influencers make no money. They're just doing it for content's sake. They can tell you whatever. You and I have had these conversations behind the scenes. We know there's no money coming into most of these guys. Why? Well, as a business owner, you got to ask yourself, who am I making it for? Why am I making it? What problem did I solve? And guess what? If you solve problems in the economy, you make money. It's that simple. And these platforms are locking down. They are locking down. You don't believe me? Go listen to some of the detailing YouTubers crying on podcasts or crying on their channel about how Google's not paying them anymore. The world's changing. It's changed very rapidly in 3 years on the social media front. Now the question is, how do you put yourself in position if you're going to invest the time? Because we know a lot of people that have invested not hundreds of hours, but thousands of hours into their Instagram, YouTube, whatever, they're seeing no money in return because they never ask themselves, this is a business. What am I doing it for? Why am I doing it? Who am I talking to? And those types of things. I think it's one of the most fascinating conversations you can have right now about social media.
Influencer, right? Like, I think that's, was it 17, 18? Like, that's when it really became a thing. And there was a lot of people made bukus and made a killing.
Yep.
We're in 23. You've got a different word for an influencer now.
What is that?
A groupie.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about it. We'll go into this thing that I pulled from another podcast and he was talking about, but I think one of the things that is definitely happening is, what we call detailer groupies. We've coined it here. They were talking about lifestyle groupies on this other podcast I was listening to, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks that we have detailing groupies now. And it's twofold. All of you see it all over Facebook and Instagram. Facebook probably the most in the detailing industry, where somebody flies around the country and goes to all these trainings and events, and all they're doing is spending thousands of dollars, not making any money. They just want to do it for the gram. They want to do it for telling you to be seen. I'm being seen at this event, so I'm somebody. Well, is that equaling money in your pocket? Well, let me tell you, we've talked to a lot of people that have exited that world and they go, this almost wrecked my business.
Yeah.
Okay. The other side of that in detailing is content creators. And what you find out is most content creators are just a different aspect of being a detailing groupie. That's it. That's all they're going to be. They're not making any money. They're trying to do deals with brands. Those brands may even put their name on something. They're not getting paid because there's no money to get paid. They're just doing it to be seen. Well, being seen is not a currency anymore, right? That was the old way. The old way is you have 1 million followers and you're going to get paid tons of money because you have 1 million followers. The world's telling you, YouTube, TikTok, everybody, that stuff's obsolete. Let me give you an example. So let's tell everybody this. Your subscriber base on YouTube means almost nothing today. Think about how many people gave a decade of their life to get 500,000, 4 million, 3 million, 1 million subscribers, and YouTube one day goes, yeah, that doesn't matter. That we don't care about that metric anymore. The world changes rapidly, and if you're not asking yourself why you're doing something, I think headed into 2024, you could be in real trouble.
I mean, a groupie. What's a groupie? Like, let's just think about that. Like, when we hear groupie, we think of the chick that was cheering on the band, right? And
Yeah.
always at every band and raving about how great the band is. And I go, like, the more I think about that, I go,
It's
well,
genius. It's
well,
genius. And we coined it here. Look, and let's give credit. There was a podcast I was listening to, and he's talking about how people have become lifestyle groupies and they want to be seen at an event, and that event is just about being seen. There's no money in being seen. And the detailing industry has this in spades.
absolutely.
In
And it will now
spades.
be so easy, right? So easy for us to now start going through that visual Rolodex, or when we go into social media the next time, whether that's a group or on our feed, we
Yeah.
can now visually start to see detailing groupies. New
Yeah.
hashtag, I
Yeah.
guarantee you. New
Yeah,
hashtag.
well, and I'll tell you what the part of it is that it's detrimental long term to someone's business.
Mm.
That's what it's
Mm.
about. Like we
Mm.
guys follow us to kind of, I think, hopefully wake up to some of the things that go on in this business in particular. And I say it all the time. You don't realize how many people are laughing at these individuals because those people are not outwardly saying anything on social media. Largely, they don't even have a platform, right? They maybe have a Facebook to talk to family and friends they're losing connection with. You don't realize until you go to SEMA and everybody's laughing at these people. Not meaning like physically laughing. It's can you believe what X, Y, and Z is going on? And this is a word or a phrase now that we can put out there and say, you guys are going to see it now,
Mm-hmm.
because this is going to black and white. You're going to see guys who leave a state to go to another state. They want to be seen at this training. They want to be seen detailing this thing. They're not getting paid. They're not, influence doesn't happen that way anymore, right? You just going somewhere and posting it on your Facebook or on your Instagram, it doesn't mean anything anymore. It did at one point. Let's be clear. You're talking 2015,
Mm-hmm.
2016, 2017. By the time we all talk about going through COVID, that all got destroyed. Look at all the energy drink companies that bowed out of the influencer market. They were the drivers of it, right? Those were the most progressive companies with the influencers. They bowed out of that stuff 2019, early 2020, before the pandemic. They never went back. And most of those guys have sold their companies for multi-billion dollars after COVID. And they had no influencer anything around them. And I think you got to ask yourself why you're doing social media. I think it's the most important question you can ask yourself if you're going to play that game. Why am I doing it?
Yeah, if we want to move over to that, sure. I was going to still keep going after groupies. Like I'm fascinated with that. And the more I think about it, I'm like, it's so hilarious. Like I'm
Oh
with
yeah,
you. I'm with
it's
you.
hilarious.
All right. So, you had talked about why and what. I think there's always currency. Let's just use that word. I think some of these people, because it's not just guys, there's female groupies now. And the there was one that you had sent me where this female was raving about so and so's lifetime coating, and she said, I put it on 2 cars. I think their currency, I think what they don't understand is their currency is the likes, it is the listens. It's not actually about information, because there's no way that any of us could go, yeah, I'm going to put a lifetime coating on 2 cars and then go publicly and tell people that they should do it, right? Like, what is the currency? Their currency is to get views or likes. What is the currency of social media? Should you, the listener, should you, the detailer, should you, the enthusiast, whatever you fall yourself into, category wise, what should you do with social media? This actually should be as that 2024 thought process for you. How much do you go into it? What do you say? And if the platforms are a business and they're not PBS, which is paid by an endowment, so they don't need, right? So social media is a business. We can all understand that. Then are you going to also pay? Are you also going to run your social media as a business with expenses, with tracking, returns, with all the things that you would do with other marketing? There
Yep.
you go, right? There's the business side of it. Do you consider social media marketing? And if you do, are you running it as a business with checks and balances?
Yeah. And we've discussed this a lot on this podcast. If you're going to put hours into it, you're already spending money. You need to start spending real money. You need to understand, how do I run an ad? What do I do? Who am I trying to target? Why am I trying to target them? We see a lot of guys that have seen a slowdown in coding or PPF. I think you have some there locally you talked to last week. What you find out is they have no plan, no idea where any of the business comes from. They're just hoping and praying one day somebody's going to buy a coating from me. Somebody's going to buy a full front PPF from me. That doesn't work. The hope and pray thing doesn't work. I think that's been largely what social media has been built on. I'm going to make content and I'm going to become famous. Well, what's famous mean? You could have 100,000 followers and you could be living in an apartment with no money, because 100,000 followers doesn't equal anything if there's no business behind it. How are you going to capitalize on that audience? You talked very recently with somebody that has a great following on YouTube. Okay. And he was on his page complaining about YouTube. And you got off the phone with him and you go, he doesn't have any idea how he's going to monetize 50, 60, 70,000 followers. That's now just a waste of time. You're doing that as a detailing groupie. You're not doing that as a business. And when you don't have a plan for how this is going to monetize itself, flying to this training, flying to that training, flying to this event, flying to that event, if there is a plan to that, I'm all for it. We've yet to see it. And we can point to multiple people who you see in all those photos and go, that guy's broke, that guy's broke, that guy's broke. We've talked to his supplier. He's late. He owes this person money. This isn't coming out of the blue for us. This is something that we've thought about and had no problem kind of viewing through a good lens the last 3 years. Like, we've been really on top of, dude, social media doesn't work like how anybody thinks usually. And we can go through guys that we know that we've had private conversations with that were like, dude, your social media, because they're frustrated. That's why we didn't just call them and say, they were like, hey, I'm frustrated. My business is this. It's like, dude, you're wasting 10 hours a week on your social media and you're not talking to anybody and you're not angling towards some business with a certain group of individual.
Isn't that where passion gets in the way?
Yeah, that's a good that could be a good way of looking at it. I just want to show people how to do things, and I just want to show people how
I'm
great.
passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm just
I love
passionate
it.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, and that's where a purpose comes in to mind. Like, look, man, you can look up in 5 years, and your business is gone. I mean, you and I looked up, and it's been 3 years since we partnered at hyperCLEAN. That went by as fast as anything. This isn't two old guys saying this. I bet there's a 21-year-old that started his business at 18 and he looks up and he goes, dude, I'm 21 now. Like, it just goes by really fast. And you don't realize that these things start to really add up. This time, this effort, this story you're telling yourself to put it on the gram, to put it on, Facebook, to put it on TikTok, you can continue to have these ideas and never get the money. And if the money never comes, that's just wasted time in business.
There's an old story, you could call them proverb, right? Proverbs are stories. And it's a story of a guy who chases after something and catches it only to know that it was just the wind. That never can grab something. And I hear you say that and I go, I wonder if that is today's groupie, right? Today's people that think they're going after, there's no real business involved. There's no real checks and balances. There's no real income to show. There's nowhere deductions that there's no actual taxes to prove. And you just go, man, that was a chasing after the wind, right? Or we can say, God damn, you pissed in the wind, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're going to be from the Midwest, right? You're pissing in the wind. You're just getting all over yourself. This ain't going anywhere.
Yep.
Not fun.
Yep. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's literally the most fascinating thing of the second half of this year leading into next year, because a lot of businesses, and let's share this, and I think we can kind of end the episode on this. The richest companies in this industry that you and I talk to, that we can pull data on, that we can pull actual numbers on, most of them aren't investing in social media. They're investing in other parts of the web that many people never talk about, optimizing their website or doing this behind the scenes or doing that behind the scenes. And then you go to their social media and you go, they're really not that invested in social media, but they're up 167% on this other part of the internet that many people never talk about. So the smartest people are starting to understand, and that's why we're sharing it, is that social media is flipping. It's probably flipped a couple times since it's been around. Social media especially, it's flipped itself. It's reinvented itself. It's went through massive changes. The most massive change ever, though, is probably the last 3 years, because now a personality doesn't really turn into anything until they have something to monetize, where some personalities were getting hired by TV networks and some personalities were given this car show or whatever. Now all of a sudden everybody's sitting back and going, these guys don't move the numbers. We're not hiring them anymore. We're not stopping. We're not getting involved in this. Big money and the people around big companies are starting to look at social media very differently than they would have 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that
And this
means
is
you have to as well.
and this is a topic internally. Absolute massive topic
Yeah.
internally. So there's a big reason why we talk about it, why we want to take an episode and continue, which we've done over the years, continue to go back and talk about this social, I don't know, what do you call it? Paradox? I mean, there's all kinds of books that have been written about what's happened since social and what's happened. And now we're in 23. And what does it happen? What does it mean at the end of 23 going into 24? And what do we think of social media going into 24? How do I invest into it? Where do I invest? What do I do? Or, as you just said, hey, there's plenty of people that are going, maybe social isn't really turning the ROI that we much once thought it was.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, guys, great episode. Nick, well, enjoy. Have a great
See you
week.
next week.